So, hi friends, today we will discuss an important current affairs issue, that is Sri Lankan economic crisis. See, this Sri Lankan economic crisis is in news, and it's not in news recently. Since last almost I can say 8 months to 1 year it was in news. And what is this Sri Lankan economic crisis and how this crisis has started and what are the reasons for this crisis and how this crisis is impacting the Sri Lankan economy, and moreover how this crisis is going to impact the Indian economy. Those things we will discuss. See, last 2 years are completely pandemic years. Last 2 years are completely pandemic years in the world. And this crisis, that too this is an economic crisis, it is exacerbated because of this pandemic. Because all the countries underwent some sort of depression in their economy. That means all the economies has maintained a low level of growth, and some of the countries have even maintained high amount of inflation. But how this Sri Lankan crisis is different to that of that crisis, and almost all the countries now they are able to recover from that COVID-19, but unfortunately this Sri Lanka has become much more worsened because of this COVID-19 crisis. What is exactly this crisis? Okay, we have been saying economic crisis. What does it mean economic crisis means? Economic crisis means there are some parameters through which you can say like there is an economic crisis. When it comes to the GDP growth, so this GDP growth of an economy is an important aspect. The GDP growth of an economy, if it is continuously coming down, or if it is low, or if it is negative, then we can call it as a recession. But some successive 3 quarters it has to be continuously decline. So this GDP growth of the Sri Lanka is very low. And the major problem that Sri Lanka is facing is on this external front. When I say external front, it is with respect to their forex reserves, it is with respect to their public debt. If at all I want to say the public debt, that means the total amount of debts taken by the government of Sri Lanka. Is 115% of GDP. 115% of GDP. Earlier it was only 90%. Prior to pandemic it was only 90 to 95%, but now it has become 115% of GDP. Then what is the GDP of Sri Lanka? GDP of Sri Lanka is around $85 billion. GDP of Sri Lanka is around $85 billion. Now you can imagine, it's almost close to $100 billion of debt that Sri Lanka is having. That means beyond the capacity of GDP, they are having the debt. The foreign exchange reserves, we call it as forex. That means how much amount of foreign currency they are having in their coffers or in their purse. Why this foreign currency is important? Foreign currency is important because if you want to import something from the outside the country, you need to pay it in forex, you can't pay it in rupees. Though you are doing very better in your domestic economy, though your growth rate is high, though poverty is eliminated, But if you don't have these forex reserves, you can't import it from the foreign country, because foreign countries are not going to accept your currency, and you need to have some internationally valued currency like dollar with you, and that is necessary for regular import. And unfortunately, earlier they are having the forex reserves pre-pandemic around $7.5 billion, but now it has become almost less than $2 billion, less than $2 billion. That means they don't have much amount of forex reserves. I'll tell how you will get the forex reserves and all. So you don't have much forex reserves, you can't import the items. If you import, you don't have money, you have very limited amount of money with you to import, though you have your own domestic currency, but you can't use it for the purpose of the import. So the forex reserves are low. The another important indicator is fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit means it is the balance, it is the difference between the revenue and expenditure in the economy. You want to spend 100 rupees in the economy as a government, but how much revenue that you have, how much income that you have? Do you really have an income of 100 rupees? If you don't have an income of 100 rupees, how you are spending 100? If suppose just assume I am having an income of 80 rupees, but I want to spend 100 rupees in the economy, there is a shortage of 20 rupees, that 20 rupees I will take it as a loan, I will take it as a loan, and that we will call it as fiscal deficit. That we will call it as fiscal deficit, and the fiscal deficit is above 10%, 10% of GDP. Then you may ask, sir, what is the difference between this debt and this debt? This is the total debt for the country, this is a debt in that particular financial year, and 10% of GDP, that means I can say every year you are taking around $8 billion, more than $8 billion as a loans in order to meet expenditure. So this is fiscal deficit. The total debt is 115% of GDP. Next, current account balance. Current account balance, because these terms are important to understand whether it is an economic crisis or not. Simply you can't say like it's a crisis. When it comes to this current account balance, they are in the negative, Sri Lanka is in the negative, that to -3 to 5%. What is this current account balance? Current account balance includes, the current account balance includes the exports of that country minus imports of that country of both goods and services. If it is negative, means the imports are high compared to that of exports. So you are not doing enough exports, you are only doing more imports, and there is a difference. That difference is 3 to 5% of your GDP. That means almost 25 to 27 billion dollars. 25 to 27 billion dollars of extra amount that you are paying for importing, because you are not able to do the more amount of exports. Next, inflation. Inflation, it is an important indicator in the economy. Inflation, because inflation is something which will take away your entire income. So the inflation in the economy is 15%. 15%. That means your prices of the goods and services are increasing at a rate of 15%. At a rate of 15%. And the money supply in the economy, has increased from 7 to 17%. Now I will sum it up so that you can understand the crisis. the growth rate is low, your overall public debt of your country is increasing, it has become 115% of the GDP. You don't have enough amount of forex reserves to meet your imports, that reduces from $7.5 billion to $2 billion, and your fiscal deficit, that means you don't have enough revenue for you. You don't have enough revenue to meet the expenditure, and every year you are trying to take more than 10% of the GDP as a loan, and in order to meet your regular expenditure. And in the case of exports and import balance, unfortunately you are not exporting more, you are importing more. If you export more, what will happen? If you export more, you will export it and you will get the foreign currency, so that you can use that foreign currency for whatever the items that is important, what is the items that are needed for your import. But on the other hand, what you are doing is, your exports are low, your imports are very high. Your exports are low, your imports are very high, means on the one hand you are not getting what you are supposed to get in terms of foreign currency, on the other hand you need to pay more amount of foreign currency for meeting your imports. So whatever the forex that has to come to your economy, it's not coming. Moreover, you are spending more and more amount of forex from your country in order to meet your imports. That is what this number. Inflation. Inflation is very, very important. If inflation is increasing, the value of money comes down. That means earlier what you have done is, just by paying 10 rupees you have purchased a tea, but even if you are paying 100 rupees or 1000 rupees, you are not able to get that single tea. That means the prices are increased, the currency that you are holding, the value has come down. Earlier if you hold 100 rupees with you, you can have a lunch, but even if you are holding 1000 rupees now, you are not able to get that lunch, because your currency has become valueless and the prices are soared up, prices increased. Because of these reasons, and money supply in the economy increased, I will tell that point later. Now if you looking into this entire thing, your economy is not growing, you don't have enough forex reserves, literally you cannot import it, and moreover your prices are increasing in the economy, people are unable to afford the items, the goods and services in the economy, and you don't have enough amount of money to meet the expenditure, because government has to spend something in the economy and they don't have. Until and unless they take it as a loan from somebody else, they are not in a position to spend that money. And above all, you have already taken a public debt, now you have to repay it. You have already taken lot of public debt, you have to repay it, but you don't have that money to repay it. You don't have that money to repay it. So you are going to become a bankrupt. You have taken a loan, but now you are saying like, I don't have money to pay. You may say like, sir, they are having some money, but that is useful for importing purposes. And the loans can be two ways, one is domestic loan, second one is external loan. That means some loans you will take in this country, some loans you will take from other country, and whatever the loans that you have taken from other country, you have to repay it in forex, and you don't have that forex, and in order to pay the domestic debt you don't have money, because you are saying like you are taking loan to spend in the economy and forget about paying the debt. Just for the regular day-to-day maintenance, you don't have money, you are taking it as a loan. How can I expect you to repay the internal loan? So they don't have money. This is exactly the problem that the country Sri Lanka is facing. The problem that the country Sri Lanka is facing. Now, I will ask a question, why actually such a problem has developed in the country called Sri Lanka? What is the reason for this problem? The reasons are many. If you consider any problem, this problem is having both short-term causes and long-term causes. Because something happened today because of COVID-19, you may say like they may plunge into this economic crisis. But you need to understand, even if this crisis, that means COVID-19 has not occurred, it could have lead to the same situation maybe after 3 or 4 years. Don't say like because of COVID I am in this position. Because of COVID my entire economy has went into a bankruptcy. Don't blame the COVID. Because COVID-19 is also responsible to some extent. Had the COVID-19 been not there, probably Sri Lanka could have taken this, Sri Lanka could have faced this problem maybe little bit later. So every problem has its own short-term causes and long-term causes. First of all, I will try to explain these long-term issues, then I will come to the short-term which are affected the economy recently. Now, see, one thing you need to understand before I entering into the long-term causes. Today they are facing the problem of GDP growth. Again I am writing so that you can understand where exactly the problem. Today they are facing the problem of inflation. Today they are facing the problem of on this external market. That means external market in the sense they don't have enough forex. See, one is interdependent on another. And if you know the GDP formula, GDP is equal to consumption plus investment plus government investment plus exports minus imports. That formula you will get. So exports and imports will certainly impact your GDP. Exports and imports will certainly impact your GDP. Today we are saying like they don't have enough forex reserves. From where you will get these forex reserves? If you do export to the other country, in return they will pay some money to you. That means your economy not in a position to export. Had you have the capacity of export, you could have get this forex reserves and perhaps you may not get this problem. And why you are not getting this forex? Because you are not exporting. What are the items we export normally? We export some goods, we export some services. And is there any other way through which we can get these forex reserves? Suppose if our persons are working in foreign country and if they are sending money to our country, then this will be also a part of forex. If I export some agricultural commodities, garments, machinery, software, anything, if I export, I will get the forex. If any of my citizen is in foreign country, he is working and if he is sending money to India, we call it as remittances, it is also part of forex. Or otherwise, if any foreigner visiting to India, then he can bring the forex into India. Because he can't get our local currency, no? So that is how the foreign visitors can also bring the forex into India. Because they have to spend some money, no? Here. So they will bring their money and they will exchange at the Reserve Bank of India or anything that is assigned by the Reserve Bank of India, and so that they can get the Indian currency and they can get the local currency, in this specific case Sri Lankan currency, and Sri Lankan currency is Sri Lankan rupee. And they will get. Or otherwise, if any foreigner invest in your country, if they want to invest anything in your country, they want to start a company in your country, they will bring that money and they will invest in your country. That is also they will get the forex. Now I am asking a question, why actually there is a problem with this forex in the economy? There is a problem of forex in the economy because they are not doing enough exports. Either this or this or this or this, or everything can be the reason. Now when it comes to the Sri Lanka, this foreigner who is the people of India, sorry, the people of Sri Lanka who are working in the foreign countries, they are sending some remittances. On this front, till recently Sri Lanka has done good, and on this foreign visitors, or we can call it as tourism, Sri Lanka has done good till recently. When it comes to the investment, actually Sri Lanka is not doing good, not doing. Now I am saying, just listen it carefully, Sri Lanka is not doing enough exports. Sri Lanka is not able to attract the foreign investments. Because of these two major reasons, they don't have enough forex, but Sri Lanka is able to attract some remittances. Sri Lanka is able to attract the foreign visitors. Till recently, Sri Lanka was done good on this front, but because of COVID-19, these two sectors also not performed well, because the Sri Lankans in foreign countries, they have lost the jobs because of this pandemic and all. They have not sent that forex to country, their own country called Sri Lanka. And the foreign visitors, because the Sri Lanka is attracting lot of income from the tourism, I will come to that number little bit later, but because of this COVID-19, no one is visiting Sri Lanka, so they are not getting. In total, there is a shortage. Now, what is the problem for this inflation? The problem for the inflation, there is a mismatch between the goods produced in the economy and the amount of money available in the economy. If there is a mismatch between the goods and money, then only it leads to inflation. Suppose if I have the 10 goods in the economy, if I have 10 rupees in the economy, then it is 1 rupee per product. Either if the money increases, if this money increases 100 but the product is same, then one product will become 10 rupees, or otherwise the money is 10 but the product has become only 1 in the economy, it becomes 10 rupees per product. This is money, this is product. That means either if money increases or if the production decreases, there is an inflation. Earlier the per product price is only 1 rupee, now it has become 10. That means this inflation is because there is a mismatch between the goods produced in the economy and the money available in the economy. And how it is possible? How the money increases in the economy? Who will pump the money into the economy? It is the central bank of that country. Like in India, Reserve Bank. If the central bank pumps more amount of money into the economy, then it leads to inflation, or otherwise if there is a shortage in the production, there can be an inflation. Either there can be a shortage in the production or there can be an increase in the money supply in the economy. Now I say money supply in the economy increases when the central bank pump more money into the economy. And when it comes to the shortage of the goods, either if your production come down, or either if your imports come down, because sometimes you can't produce everything in your country, you have to import. So either if the production come down or the imports come down, then there will be a shortage of goods that leads to the inflation. And unfortunately in Sri Lankan case, both the things happened. There is a shortage of goods and services in the economy. There is a more amount of money pumped into the economy. Because of that, this inflation reached 15%. And because of these two fronts, automatically GDP growth comes down. Because people are not ready to consume, because the prices are very high, and because of that you can't produce. So this is exactly the crisis that Sri Lanka is having. Now I will come to the reasons for this entire crisis. See, the reasons for this entire crisis, as I already told you, like it is long term and short term. Now I'll try to explain you the history of this crisis, because we think like it is a crisis of just 2021 2020. No, once you understand the course of history of Sri Lanka, you can understand better what are the exactly the true reasons and where were the roots to this problem in the economy. In the year 1948, when Sri Lanka became the independent from Britishers, they have given importance to this public sector. So this public sector played an important role, and the Sri Lanka is having a constitutional multi-party socialist republic. It is a socialist republic. That means at that point of time, the socialistic ideas have influenced many countries in the world, and one among them is Sri Lanka. And even when Britishers were there, the Britishers were also started their own companies. And immediately after the independence, they have started giving importance to this public sector or socialistic model. Socialistic model in the sense, the government has to start the businesses, the government has to start the companies, the government has to start the companies. So government started the companies. Once the government started the companies, then what is the problem? The problem is this. If government started companies, it involves politics. It don't work on the fair business lines. And politicians brings their own people into this business organization. And once they bring their own people into this, then they can't work, because a business has to be run on an efficient lines. The person who is having a skills, he must be provided employment. Otherwise, if you bring somebody else just because it is a government company, it cannot run properly. That is how this system has started, and the same system started in India also. But by the time of 1971, there was a political instability in the country. There was a communist revolution happened in the year 1971-72 time in Sri Lanka. And after that, immediately there was a Tamil crisis that was started in the Sri Lanka. We call it as LTTE. So this LTTE war has started between the Sri Lankan forces and Tamilians. And the Sri Lankan society was completely divided into two, like though they have some other communities, but mostly it is the Sinhalese, that means they are the Buddhists, and the Tamils. So the issue between the Sinhalese and Tamils started. When this crisis was happened in the 1971 and after that, and this war has finally ended in 2009. So these years from 1971 to 2009, when the investments are completely only in the public sector, there is a social unrest in the country. Then in order to pacify its own citizens, the government has started providing the employment, because people need employment some or other way, and the governments are again more emphasized on the employment through the government. That means government led businesses, government led companies. That is how they have done. When they have done, what happened is people are recruited and people are promoted mainly through the political affiliations and connections. So these politics are involved in this. Now the businesses are not running in an efficient way. And just imagine, in a country, if at all country has to grow, it has to produce more, and unfortunately that entire production process in the hands of the government, that too it is completely filled with the politics. Because of that, it is not able to produce. It's not able to produce more. And though whatever it is producing, it is not to such an extent of export it, because if you want to export it, if you just don't, if you just do the production process in your country, it's not sufficient, because you need to be competitive at the world market, then only you can export. And unfortunately you haven't exported, and you never allow any other private people to start the business so that they can produce, so that they can export, so that you will get that forex reserves. You haven't allowed these people. You started only your own company, and that too it involved politics. It has become inefficient, and ultimately you don't know what is export and all. Very limited exports that you have started doing. But moreover, you need to import lot of items, because you can't manufacture everything in your country. You can't manufacture everything in your country. And when you are importing, that definitely you need to pay the forex, but unfortunately you are not gaining forex. Then how they have maintained this balance? They are having a habit, of taking this debt from the foreign country. They used to take the debt from the foreign country and they used to repay it. And whatever that limited amount of money that I said about the money coming through the remittances and money coming through the tourism, they have used this import purposes. And this has been continuing, but still you never concentrate on how can I really improve my exports, how can I really having that forex reserves. They never thought. This is how they have devised their own system, because of internal politics, because of social unrest. So this is how the problem has developed in Sri Lanka over a period of time. Why I am giving this entire story is, even if you want to solve a problem at this moment, you can't solve it automatically. Today Sri Lanka don't have the forex reserves. Okay, someone is giving it as a loan, I'll come to that later. Someone is giving the loan, someone can give the loan for 1 day or 2 days. Next day what will you do? You have to earn your own forex reserves. How will you earn your own forex reserves until and unless you can't export? And do you think that you can export in 1 day? Do you think that you will become competitive in 1 day to the world market? What about your processes, technologies, production techniques, managerial efficiency, competitiveness? Will it come in 1 day? It's not possible. You can't get it in 1 day. You should have understood this problem earlier and you should have settled down. But they haven't understood. And that too, there were lot of World Bank report, and even the Sri Lankan own government constituted some committees on this public sector undertakings. And hardly the population is 22 million people. It's not even more. And they have constituted a committee, and in that committee, the committees have given lot of recommendations. Even the World Bank has also given lot of recommendations, like you are completely depending on this government sector. No, let us start the private people. And when you're looking into the education, the Sri Lankan on some educational indicators, they are good, but unfortunately their education is something more related to this arts and general. It's not a technical education, it's not technical courses. So that is how they have promoted the education. And they haven't allowed private people to start the business. They have followed a socialistic thing. Even today, around 80% of the land is in the hands of the government of Sri Lanka. And if someone want to expand a business, someone want to start a new business, it is very difficult to start in the Sri Lanka. If you are looking into the ease of doing business in Sri Lanka, you can understand. And to some extent, it was better than India at one point of time. But now India has improved. It's very difficult to enforce the construct, take the permission, start the business. Tax administration is very difficult. So when you have those many problems, how can you really improve your exports? Increasing of exports is not 1 day affair. It's not 1 day affair. And that is how this problem of less exports, more imports, and maintaining a deficit in the forex reserves has came into this level. And I told you another important thing. Okay, you can get the forex through the investment also. No one is ready to invest in this Sri Lanka. No one is ready to invest in Sri Lanka. I will come to that investment little bit later, where actually they are getting investments and all. So these are the problems, that the Sri Lanka is facing. There is no boost to the private sector, and the Sri Lanka, though it is having some capacity, it is not connected with the global supply chain, because you are not ready to export. Even if you are ready to export, your product is not so qualitative. So you haven't connected with the global supply chain, and right kind of foreign investments not enter into your country, and there is no trade and business promotion in your country, and there is no enough skill set to the people, though they are educated, but their education related to something different. So this is exactly the problem that Sri Lanka is having. Now what happened is, and another important thing is, after this 2009, that means when this LTTE and Sri Lankan war is over, the Rajapaksas have started ruling the country, and unfortunately we have to accept that they are corrupt. They have only their limited parochial interest rather than the long term interest for the survival of the country. Unfortunately, they have only taken care about where they are getting the benefit, but they haven't think about in the larger interest of that country. When you are taking a loan, you must think about, like, how can I repay this loan? When you are taking a loan, you must think, how can I use this loan productively, because I have to repay this loan after some time. I must use that loan for the productive purposes rather than giving it as a subsidies, or distributing the money to your own people, or involving in the corruption activities and take that money. You are not supposed to do this, but you have done that. You have taken different type of loans without looking into its implication in the long term. And today, immediately in the month of July, you need to pay $1 billion worth of foreign loan. How will you repay? You have taken the loan, you know that you don't have the money, but you have taken the loan. When you have taken the loan, you must use it for productive purposes. But unfortunately, in the total spending of this Sri Lanka, most of the amount will go to the salaries, subsidies and whatever the soaps that the government is giving to the people. Can you really maintain such a financial indiscipline? Sri Lanka has maintained such a financial indiscipline, because today Sri Lanka is giving the different reasons, but they are not the original reasons. These are all the original reasons, because every country has got problem of COVID-19. But today you are saying, like, because of COVID-19 I am getting this problem. When every country recovered from the COVID-19, why can't you? Because your system itself is having that problem. Your system itself is having that problem. And that problem has exactly come into the picture after 2020, because during this COVID-19. And what happened? During this time, this tourism has completely stopped. You know the reason, because all the flights halted, and people don't want to travel because of this COVID-19. And your remittances stopped, because even your foreign people, even your own citizens working in foreign country, they did not find the employment because of these lockdowns. And unfortunately, see, a country should not depend on these things to such a level. And if I want to give this number, this tourism almost 10% of the GDP, that is contributed through this tourism sector. So 10% of the GDP is through the tourism sector, and almost I can say the 12% they are coming, I can say this tourism around 10%, and sometimes it can be extended up to 12% also. Remittances is 8 to 9% of your GDP. That means 20% of your GDP is coming from this tourism and remittances. See, if you have the diaspora, be proud about that. You have a tourism capability, be proud about that. But the point is, you are not supposed to depending on these two things alone. You must start the production. You must make your people skill, and you must export, you must produce, you must utilize your own people, start domestic production. And simply you have depending on your people who are working in foreign country. Now suddenly there was a lockdown, they don't find the employment, and because of that you suffered. You are depending on somebody who is visiting your country for the tourism purposes, and because suddenly he stopped, now you are facing this problem. And that too, if it is up to 5% or 10% of the economy, we can understand it. But see, the almost 20% of the economy is depending on that. 20% completely it has become zero. Then how can you survive? How can you survive? And moreover, above this, they have made a policy. That policy is organic farming. Organic farming. What is this organic farming? Organic farming means they don't use these chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Chemical fertilizers and pesticides. This is what organic farming. So it is very good because pesticide content is low and it is healthy. I can understand it. But the point is, you can't implement it in one go across the country. It has to be done on an experimental basis, it has to be started on pilot basis, it has to be expanded over the country gradually, but not in 1 year, because the organic farming has its own limitations. In the very next year, when you turn from fertilizer to non-fertilizers, you don't get the growth of the crop, you don't get enough the grains from that. But you have implemented, because you don't have the forex reserves, you don't have money to import the fertilizers and all, and you went for the organic farming. And what it has led? It has led to the reduction in the entire agricultural output. So there is no agricultural output, and moreover this country is again exporting these tea leaves, and that production has also come down. So on the one hand your exports has come down, on the one hand the availability of food production in your country has come down. And this, apart from tea leaves, they used to also export spices. Because of this COVID-19, this has come down, and because of your organic farming, the tea has come down and your agricultural output has come down. It led to shortage of food grains in the economy. It led to the shortage of food grains in the economy. Shortage of food grains in the economy. And the shortage of food grains happened in the economy, along with the tea export has come down, the spices export has come down. And even prior to this also, this country is used to import the cereals, this country used to import the dairy products, this country used to import the sugar, this country is used to import the vegetables, pharmaceuticals. That means though there is an agricultural production in your country, that is not sufficient. That is the reason why you used to import cereals, you used to import some of the vegetables, used to import the dairy products and sugar. Now your production has come down, you have to import, but the problem is you don't have the forex reserves, so import has become very difficult. The availability in the domestic economy has come down, that lead to the inflation, and when the money is not available in the economy, what they have done is they pumped money into the economy, because some of the economic principles, Keynesian model say that whenever there is a crisis in the economy, just pump the money into the economy, it will revive the economy. That is how the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has pumped more amount of money into the economy. This money pumped into the economy has created more inflation in the economy, because this is not always workable. You have to pump money in a careful manner, but you haven't pumped in that way. And when this inflation started increasing, that led to the depreciation of the currency. That means the currency value started coming down. On the one hand, you don't have the forex reserves, on the other hand, you pumped the money into the economy, on the other hand, there is an inflation. So, the pumping of money into the economy, no forex, that means less forex, and the inflation Moreover, investments moved out of your economy. This combination of all these four factors has led to this depreciation of currency. If your currency depreciates today, I can tell you the value of the today's currency is 287 Sri Lankan rupees. Sri Lankan rupees is equals to $1. $1. If at all they want to get $1, they have to pay 287 Sri Lankan rupees. Sri Lankan rupees. And if this value increases, it will be very difficult to import. You don't have forex reserves is the first point, but some of the essential items you have to import, no? Even for the essential items, now you have to pay huge amount of money. Just assume I am importing a pen. I am importing a pen. Just pen cost, just assume $1 and you have to pay 280 rupees now. That is the reason why they are not in a position to import the vegetables. They are not in a position to import the cereals. They are not in a position to import the dairy products. Finally, they are not in a position even to import the paper and ink. That is the reason why they have cancelled the exams. They have cancelled the exams because they are not in a position even to import the food grains, because they have limited availability of the forex reserves. Moreover, when currency depreciates, you have to pay more amount of money for that. More amount of money for that. That is how the entire crisis has aggravated. One thing, you haven't developed such a industrial ecosystem in your country. You are completely depending on government, and that has become inefficient. And on the above, you have become corrupt, and you are now not even promoted a business environment. And because of COVID-19, whatever the revenue that you are using, whatever the revenue normally that you are getting, that has completely stopped. And moreover, because of your policies, agricultural production has come down, your exports has come down, and your imports are increased, your currency value depreciated, and that is the reason why it has become very difficult. That is the reason why people are in queue to purchase the item, because very limited availability, and that too you have to pay huge amount of money for that. And when this thing happened, what the Sri Lankan government has said, no, this entire thing is not because of fee, because of these hoarders or black marketeers. That means whenever in the economy people, the trader find that there is going to be a shortage of anything, definitely what they will do is they will illegally store the items, and they will create an artificial scarcity in the economy, so that they will try to get more benefit from this. This is how the market economy works. And why these hoarders are started hoarding? Because there is a shortage, but you are not recognizing that there is a shortage. You are saying like these people are created the shortage. These people not created the shortage. These people use that condition, use that situation as an opportunity. Anyhow, you put some conditions, and then, but still the problem has not solved yet. The problem has not solved yet. And day by day it is increasing. Day by day it is increasing. And when it comes to the investments, now till now I talked about only the goods and services production, because investments is also important. Investment is also important. Because if an investor comes, he will provide employment, he will produce something, and with the help of this investor you can export, you can gain the forex. But unfortunately, when it comes to the investment, Sri Lanka has attracted investment only in few sectors. That too the sectors which are not going to impact the huge section of the society. I'll tell you, real estate, to some extent real estate, tourism, telecommunication, this ports, in this. And that too, which countries are invested in your country, and you are invited China to invest more. Do you think that China will invest for your own purpose? Do you think that China will invest for your own development? No, China is having a habit of looking her own interests, and you are investing in those, you are investing only those countries, but you are not inviting the investors to start a business unit, to start a manufacturing company, to start the different companies which will provide employment and which will increase your export capabilities. You haven't done that. And you have taken the debt, you have taken the debt from many countries, you have taken it from China, you have taken it from Japan, you have taken it from India to some extent, you have taken it from the World Bank, you have taken it from the other, and today your external debt is more than 50%. Normally countries don't have that much amount of external debt. Countries have the debt, but they will have the internal debt. That means they will take it from their own people in their own currency. But now you have taken more than 50% from the foreign country. If you take more than 50% from the foreign country, and it is around, I can tell you, 62%, around 62% you have taken it from the foreign countries. How will you repay? You don't have the forex, and you wanted to take loan from somebody to pay this debt again. This is what? Debt trap. Debt trap in the sense, in order to repay the debt, you have to take another debt. How will you repay that debt? Again you have to take another debt. This is how it happened. And some people are blaming China also. Because of the China's debt trap diplomacy, you have given lot of loans to the Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka has not used that money for other purposes, because you yourself started creating different infrastructure, and to some extent that loan has become unviable, and in return to that Sri Lanka has given some ports to you, 99 years of lease they have given to you. And now Sri Lanka is not in a position. Why China has given that loans? Because China wanted to occupy some of the key installations in the Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka is situated at the strategic position in the Indian Ocean. But you have taken the loan. You have taken the loan, but now you haven't utilized it. Now you are not having a capacity to pay that loan. Again you are going to China to ask, please give the loan again. They are ready to give. They are ready to give to some extent. But they don't give, they don't save you, because they don't interest in saving you from the debt trap and all. They are having only their own interest. So to some extent they are blaming China. Some people are blaming China, but I can't blame the China fully, because you must have your own discipline, and that discipline is not there in the history of Sri Lanka. You haven't adopted such path. So this is how the problem has become so complex. This is how the problem has become so complex. Now from this problem, if you want to move out, what you have to do? If you want to move out of this problem, what you have to do? You have to, first of all, come out of this crisis. For that you need forex, because this is the problem exactly you are facing. You need a forex, and for that what you have done? You went to India and you asked India to provide the loan, and India said, I will give $1 billion. And you went to China. China has given $2.8 billion. Again you have asked $1 billion. Again they are agreed to give this again another $1 billion also. Apart from this, the Sri Lanka has signed the currency swap agreement between these two countries. Currency swap agreement means whenever the Sri Lanka is doing the trade with these two countries, they don't use dollars. Now the Sri Lanka and India can use their own respective currency to do the transaction. Why they have? Because Sri Lanka is literally depending on these two countries for their exports and imports, and if they insist, Sri Lanka is importing something from India and China, and if India and China insist on paying Sri Lanka in dollars, then it will be so difficult for Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka is already facing the problem of this shortage of dollars. And why only dollar? Because dollar is an internationally recognized currency, and that is the reason why you agreed to the India and Sri Lanka. If I import something from India, I will pay it in Indian rupee, and if I import anything from China, I will pay it in renminbi. That is how they have signed an agreement to some extent, and they have taken the loan, but still no. Then they have to get this loan. Who has to give that loan? Do you think that any country will give a loan to such a bankrupt country? Because India is having its own interest in the region, that is why India is giving. China is having its own interest in the region, that is why China is giving. Now the only alternative source, that is International Monetary Fund, because this fund is for this purpose only. If any country is facing any economic stability problem, IMF will provide the loans. And Sri Lanka initially so reluctant to go to the IMF, because if you go to the IMF, IMF will provide the loan, but IMF loans, they are not simple loans, loans with conditionalities. They will impose lot of conditions. They will say how to use this money, where to stop your spending, where you to stop the governmental intervention, where you need to promote the foreign countries, which type of countries you need to allow into your country. That conditionalities comes with the IMF. That is why they said they are reluctant. But I think they are now in discussion with IMF. They are now in discussion with the IMF. IMF will certainly provide the loan, but IMF comes with conditionalities. Whether that conditionalities are good or bad, that has to be debatable at the later, but that conditionalities are very important for the survival of the economy. Because just take the case of India and China. India and China provided the loan. India and China provided the loan, and okay, you have provided the loan and they have used it for the same purposes. And after this completion of the money, who has to save the Sri Lanka? Who has to save the Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka cannot be saved anybody. Sri Lanka has to save on its own by increasing its exports. You can't ask everyone to visit Sri Lanka just because you are in crisis, and that too when you are in crisis, no one will visit your country. And do you think that your citizens will send the money in terms of remittances when you are in crisis? No, they don't send. They will try to save somewhere in that country only. Then how will you save? So just giving the loan to the Sri Lanka will not solve the problem. The Sri Lankan problem lies in Sri Lanka has to develop on its own. Sri Lanka has to build this forex reserves on its own. For that, Sri Lanka must structure itself, and Sri Lanka must reorient itself, and that reorientation can happen with this IMF sanctions. Otherwise they don't give money. They are not like India and China. They are not generous. They will only, and that too it is a loan only. These are all credits. These are not some free grant. So this is the only option now available to the Sri Lanka. This is the only option now available to the Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka must think about it. Sri Lanka must think about it. And the negotiations are going on, and Sri Lanka is requesting India and China to give some loan, but these countries are also having their own limitation. They don't go beyond a particular point. Moreover, just because we are giving a loan, don't think that the problem will be solved. The problem will not be solved until and unless the structural thing is changed. The structural thing is changed. And actually this present Gotabaya Rajapaksa has tried to some extent to liberalize the economy, but he has not succeeded because of this politics and all. No, it has become now 4 Rajapaksas are ruling, and lot of people are saying like they are corrupt. Now the Sri Lankans are protesting against their own government, and you have announced lot of subsidies. You are spending a lot of money on wasteful expenditure. You haven't spent even the debt amount of money on the creation of capital asset, because someone is there for you to create this infrastructure, because you are depending on China. And ultimately they have taken that entire land for 99-year lease. They don't pay any money that is coming out of that project for you. So this is how you have misused the money. This is how you have maintained some sort of indiscipline in finance. You haven't maintained prudency in finance. That is exactly the problem. That is what exactly the problem. And in the year 1978, I'll tell you, this is the first country who started opening the economy. Even 20 years, even this is around 10 years, 10, that 12, total 13 years prior. 13 years prior to India, they have tried to open the economy in the year 1978. But there is a lot of swings in the economic policy of Sri Lanka. They neither take this position completely nor that position completely. They are completely swinged on the two extreme ends. Because of that, they have created an inefficient economic system in their country. Just because you have depended on remittances and tourism, you haven't understood the problem till now, but when suddenly they stop, you have realized like somewhere you have done the mistake. Today someone is ready to give the money, but you know that you cannot be saved with that money even if they have provided. You need to change your system, and if you have a courage to really save the country from that, you have to change the system. But you must understand, you can't change it immediately. Again, it will take some time. You should have started this process earlier, and unfortunately Sri Lanka has not started that process. Now, so this even exchange value has also increased. Now currency value has come down, and you have taken very short term temporary measures. You haven't taken a long term measure, unfortunately. And when the currency value is depreciating, what you have done is, what are the dollars that are available with you, you pumped into the economy. This is the one way. When currency value is depreciating with respect to the dollar, normally dollars will be pumped into the economy. Likewise, you have pumped the dollars into the economy, and ultimately you are left with few dollars, but you need to pay the debt. How will you pay? So that means there is no clear cut long term strategy in the mind, like what are the problems that I am going to face it in the future. Because of that lack of long term vision, Sri Lanka is facing this problem. And some of the people are suggesting like you need to change the different policies of the Sri Lanka, then only you can save this country. And some of the suggestions are like this. I will give some of the suggestions. They are saying like, first of all, you have to do this fiscal consolidation. Fiscal consolidation means what is the revenue that is available to you, where you need to spend, where you need to cut the expenditure, what is the wasteful expenditure, what is the useful expenditure, and what expenditure will give money in return to the government. That you have to be very careful about the fiscal consolidation. Okay, so the recurrent expenditure, what we call normally we call revenue expenditure, that must be reduced. Unfortunately, it is very high. And the Sri Lankan public sector needs a serious restructuring and reduce the wasteful expenditure. That must be done first. Second, monetary policy in the sense, the central bank, it must have its own autonomy. The central bank, it must have its own independence. Simply you can't print the money and you can't release it into the public. And you have printed the money, you have released it into the market, you have seen how it is caused to the inflation. So you are not supposed to do that. You have to give it a loan to the governments, but at the market level, like how India is following through its ways and means and advances. You have to do in that way. You can't simply print the money and pump it into the economy, and you have pumped it and you have created the inflation in the economy. So there must be some sort of autonomy to the central banks. So they have to take care about this inflation and all. But instead of regulating the inflation, you yourself injected the money, and that has led to the inflation. So you created the inflation rather regulating the inflation. Banking sector, very, very important, because the banking sector is completely under the control of government in Sri Lanka. And you are insisting on a particular banker to provide the loan to a particular company, even though the banker knows that this loan will become an NPA and this loan is not going to they are not going to get back this loan. And you are insisting on the banks. Do you think that the financial system survives? And do you think that you can build a better country without having a strong financial sector, strong banking system? If tomorrow someone want to start a business, from where they will get the money? If your bank will getting into bankruptcy, if your bank is completely with the NPAs, so that is what you need to do. Next, External sector, this is very very important. External sector, simply okay, tourism, let it happen, tourists will come. Remittances, some people, those who don't find the employment, they may go, or the people who really need to go foreign country, they will go. But you have to design your economy in such a way that the foreign direct investments in various sectors must enter into your country, must come to your country. And you need to improve the corporate sector in the country, and please produce more in the economy, enhance the skill set, use the potential of your own people, do the domestic production, if possible do the exports. Otherwise, if you simply depending on the debt, or if you simply depending on few areas like tourism and remittances, you are going to face this problem again. So this FDI, and you need to diversify the exports. Instead of exporting only few countries, instead of exporting only few products, diversify your exports. And sign the trade agreements with the different countries, connect with the market, connect with the globe. Be a part of global value chain, global supply value chain, and be the net exporter, and so that you can provide the employment, so that you can gain more and more amount of forex that also lead to the GDP growth. This must be done. This must be done. And another important thing is just promote this domestic savings. Very very important, because you people don't have a habit of savings, you don't have an investment in your country. That is the reason why you are bringing money from the foreign country. Why can't you use your own domestic savings? Improve that savings habit and use that money, invest somewhere, start production, it creates employment to some more people, again save it, again you will get the investment, again use that investment, again produce more, again they will get the salaries, again they will store it in the bank, and that savings again you put it as investment. This is what the model you have to follow when you don't have the capital. Just because you don't have the capital, if you start depending on foreign countries, and if you take most of the debts from the foreign countries, do you think that it will survive or you can sustain over a period of time? You cannot sustain it. That is the problem that you are facing. And even today also, when there is a problem to the debt, again you are looking into the foreign countries who will give the debt to me. Somewhere you need to learn the lessons from the history, lessons from the other countries, lessons from your own country. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka has not done, but these are some of the solutions that we can offer through which this Sri Lankan crisis can be saved. And don't go with that the organic agricultural system now itself. Just do it gradually. Do it gradually. So this is how you need to save the country. You need to save the country and try to build the forex reserves through this exported money. Don't build your forex just by taking loan from somebody. If you take loan from somebody to build the forex, again you have to repay it next day, and have your own money. Have your own money and do this production, export it and get that money and save that money, and that money you use it for the imports. That is how you need to build the economy. And unfortunately, Sri Lanka has not done that, but these are some important issues. Now, I will come to the end of my lecture, like how it is going to influence India. Okay, though it is a problem to Sri Lanka, but how it is going to affect India? Is it really good for India? Certainly you can't say like when some country is facing some problem, it is good for India. You can't say it is going to affect India also. But in some ways, in some cases it affects in a positive way, in some cases it affects in negative way. So what are the positive ways? One, this is perhaps the right time for India to negotiate with the Sri Lanka, because the Sri Lanka is having a habit of swinging between India and China, and they are not certain in some projects, and India is already negotiating with different type of projects with Sri Lanka, and that too Sri Lanka is very important for India because Sri Lanka is in a strategic position. So use this opportunity. We must save the Sri Lanka because it is our neighbor. Instability in Sri Lanka lead to some sort of security problem to the India. That is why Sri Lankan security is important, Sri Lankan stability is important. We are with the Sri Lankan, we have already helped the Sri Lanka, we are going to help the Sri Lanka, but the point is use this as an opportunity to try to settle whatever the issues that were pending with the Sri Lanka. Use this as an opportunity. Next, because India's geopolitical interests are involved in that state, because lot of our neighbors are moving towards the China. Now use this opportunity at least to get Sri Lanka with you, but Sri Lanka is again playing the same game with the China and India also, but you have to get some sort of commitments from the Sri Lanka on some of the things. Like I can give you an example like oil infrastructure at Trincomalee. We are in discussion, they are unable to finalize it. Next, if they go to IMF, that means they already went to IMF. If they have settled it, then definitely IMF will give the loan, but IMF loan comes with a lot of conditionalities, and you know this IMF is a Western favored country, and if the Western favored country, if they try to entering into Sri Lanka, because when they are giving the money, they will say like you must allow these companies and that companies. Does it really lead to the dominance of the West in the Sri Lanka? If so, how it is going to impact the India? If it contains China, is it really good for India, or we will get another force, like instead of China you will get another Western force? So the geopolitics that are going to change in the Sri Lanka because of this IMF loan, India has to keenly observe it, because it is going to affect India's interest also. That is the second point that we must be very careful. Next, third one. By using this as an opportunity, India can pursue the other neighboring states. See China, how the different type of loans it will give. Don't fall in prey with this Sri Lankan loan. Don't go with these Chinese loans. Chinese loans are not at all good. See what happened in Sri Lanka. Just because you are thinking like you are getting the loans, but that loans comes with lot of burden, and it has led to the problem in this Sri Lanka. So why can't you abandon that model? Why can't you come up with us? And we are here to make you sustainable. So use this opportunity by India in order to negotiate with other neighboring countries. Use this as an opportunity. Next, the serious problem that India is going to face is this exodus. That means the poor Sri Lankans, maybe the Tamilians, because they are facing a serious crisis, and that crisis definitely will push some of the people from that state, and immediately the neighboring countries will definitely have that impact. Already there are some reports like some people have already entered into India through these fishing boats, and this is going to affect India also, because it leads to the refugee problem. And if the country is unstable, that means because of economic crisis, if it is unstable, this unstableness or the instability in the Sri Lanka will attract this anti-social elements, especially these terrorist groups, because they always looks for an unstable the territory. And if they find Sri Lanka, it will have its own impact on India. So we must be very careful about that security angle also, apart from humanitarian. Next, India is having a bilateral trade relations of around $4 billion, but in some cases, Indian exports to some extent is going to effect. So this is not a big number, but certain sectors are going to influence, especially with respect to these pharmaceuticals and all, they are going to affect because India is exporting more. Next, the another important problem is Indian investors, because Indian government has already provided a loan to the Sri Lanka, and Indian investors are doing some projects in Sri Lanka. Because of this economic crisis, they are going to face lot of problem, because they cannot continue their projects. So this is one important aspect that India is going to face. Okay, so these are some of the problems that India is going to face, or some of the advantages, some of the problems, but certainly these are important aspects. And another important aspect, one more thing, is India is having its own interest in the Sri Lankan Tamils, and we are all saying like Sri Lankan Tamils should get some infrastructure, Sri Lankan Tamils should get some sort of political power, and there should be an implementation of Amendment 13 to the Constitution. These things we are concerned about the Tamils in Sri Lanka. India is having some sort of concern about the Tamils in Sri Lanka. Because of this economic crisis, these people are again going to face lot of problems. So again, this is a concerning thing for India. So it's a blend of all. India is having some concerns, India is having some I cannot say advantages, but India is having some opportunities to settle with the Sri Lanka. Not because Sri Lanka is so close, but because of Sri Lanka's position in the geopolitics, because Sri Lanka is there in that location. So definitely India must help, and India must use this as an opportunity. At the same time, India must also prepare for the challenges what they are going to face. So this is how the Sri Lankan crisis is going to impact India. Okay, thank you.
Amrita IAS Academy.